Nobody talks about this, but almost everyone has noticed it at some point. A stretch of days where the smell is noticeably worse than usual, sharper, more sulfuric, unmistakably different from the baseline you have always considered normal. And then comes the silent question. You never type into a search engine, should I be concerned about this? The answer, as with most things your body does, depends entirely on the context. Today we are going to give you the scientific framework to understand exactly what foul-smelling flatulence is telling you about the state of your gut. When it reflects a temporary dietary fluctuation, when it signals a deeper imbalance, and when it demands medical attention. Start with the basics. A healthy adult passes gas between 10 and 20 times per day on average, with some studies recording up to 40 times as a normal upper range. The vast majority of that gas, roughly 99% by volume, is composed of odorless compounds: nitrogen, carbon dioxide, hydrogen, oxygen, and methane. The smell, the entire olfactory event, comes from less than 1% of the total gas volume. The primary culprit is hydrogen sulfide, a colorless, pungent gas with the signature rotten egg odor. Secondary contributors include indole, skatole, and ammonia, each adding their own dimension of unpleasantness. Trace quantities, but an intensity that travels far. The critical question is who makes these compounds, and what does their overproduction mean? The answer is your gut microbiome. The trillions of microorganisms living in your intestinal tract are the direct producers of these odor compounds. Sulfate-reducing bacteria ferment sulfur-containing food residues to produce hydrogen sulfide. Protein-fermenting bacteria generate indole, skatole, and ammonia through a process called putrefaction, the bacterial decomposition of incompletely digested protein. When your gut microbiome is in healthy equilibrium, dominated by beneficial lactobacillus and bifidobacterium species, these odor-producing processes are kept at modest, low odor levels. The moment that equilibrium breaks down, the odor-producing bacteria gain ground, and hydrogen sulfide production rises sharply, a sudden and persistent worsening of flatulence. Odor is therefore one of the most direct signals your body can send you that the microbial balance in your gut has shifted in an unfavorable direction. Understanding the specific causes of this shift gives you both diagnostic insight and a practical path to improvement. The first and most immediately controllable cause is excessive protein consumption, particularly from animal sources. When protein-rich foods including red meat, eggs, and processed meats are consumed in large amounts, not all of the protein is absorbed in the small intestine. The undigested portion descends into the colon, where bacterial putrefaction converts it into hydrogen sulfide, indole, skatole, and ammonia. Red meat is particularly potent in this regard because it is rich in the sulfur-containing amino acids methionine and cysteine, which are the direct substrate for hydrogen sulfide production by sulfate-reducing bacteria. A study published in a peer-reviewed journal demonstrated that a dietary pattern promoting gut sulfur metabolism through high animal food intake was associated with increased total and disease-specific mortality, with sulfur metabolizing bacterial patterns as a plausible biological mechanism. When your flatulence smells unusually sulfuric after a high meat meal, that odor is a real-time readout of active hydrogen sulfide production in your colon. The second cause is gut dysbiosis, the broader disruption of microbial community balance. Antibiotic use is the most abrupt trigger, capable of eliminating large proportions of beneficial bacteria within days, and leaving sulfate-reducing and putrefactive species in relative dominance. Chronic stress activates the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis, which directly alters gut motility and microbial composition. Diets dominated by ultra-processed foods, low in dietary fiber and rich in additives, selectively starve beneficial fiber-fermenting bacteria while providing substrates that favor pathogenic species. Sleep deprivation measurably shifts microbial composition within days. Any sustained combination of these factors creates a dysbiotic state, in which hydrogen sulfide output rises. The gut lining becomes more permeable in a condition often called leaky gut, and systemic low-grade inflammation follows. Research links elevated hydrogen sulfide production by dysbiotic, sulfate-reducing bacteria to intestinal epithelial damage, inflammatory bowel disease, pathogenesis, and associations with colorectal cancer risk. The foul odor is not the primary problem here. It is the visible tip of a deeper inflammatory process. The third cause is small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, abbreviated SIBO. The small intestine is designed to be a relatively bacteria-sparse environment. Bacterial populations in the small intestine should be 1 million to 10 million times lower than those in the colon. When this ratio breaks down, and bacteria colonize the small intestine in abnormal numbers, they begin fermenting and putrefying carbohydrates and proteins that would normally be absorbed cleanly long before reaching the colon. 2/3 of SIBO patients report excessive gas production and foul-smelling flatulence as their primary symptoms, often appearing within 30 to 60 minutes of eating any meal. Research shows SIBO prevalence among irritable bowel syndrome patients ranges from 30 to 85%, suggesting it is considerably underdiagnosed. The distinguishing pattern is flatulence that occurs rapidly after virtually every meal, independent of what was consumed, and that is consistently and severely malodorous. Hydrogen breath testing and methane breath testing are relatively accessible diagnostic tools that can confirm SIBO. The fourth cause is food intolerance, particularly lactose intolerance, and sensitivity to fermentable carbohydrates known as FODMAPs. When the enzyme lactase is deficient, undigested lactose passes into the colon and is rapidly fermented by bacteria, generating large gas volumes and characteristic odor. The same mechanism applies to high FODMAP foods, including certain fruits, vegetables, legumes, and wheat products, in individuals whose gut microbiome ferments these substrates particularly aggressively. The diagnostic pattern here is a reliable temporal relationship. Unusually foul gas, consistently appearing 1 to 2 hours after consuming the specific trigger food. The fifth cause is chronic constipation. When stool remains in the colon for extended periods due to slow transit, the organic material within it undergoes prolonged bacterial fermentation and putrefaction, generating progressively larger quantities of sulfurous and nitrogenous odor compounds. The longer the transit time, the more opportunity sulfate-reducing and putrefactive bacteria have to produce hydrogen sulfide, indole, and scatol from the stagnant contents. Chronic constipation also creates a microbial environment that favors harmful over beneficial species, further amplifying the odor production over time. Now comes the section that requires absolute clarity. Most foul-smelling flatulence reflects one or more of the 5 causes above and responds to dietary and lifestyle adjustment. However, the following specific patterns constitute red flags that require prompt medical evaluation. Persistent foul-smelling gas that continues for several months without dietary explanation may indicate chronic gut dysbiosis or underlying intestinal disease. Foul gas accompanied by blood in the stool, particularly dark, sticky, or maroon-colored blood, is a potential signal of colorectal bleeding. Polyps are colorectal cancer and requires immediate assessment. Foul gas combined with unexplained weight loss over weeks to months, regardless of appetite, warrants urgent investigation. Foul gas combined with severe abdominal pain, visible abdominal distension, or chronic diarrhea, alternating with constipation may indicate inflammatory bowel disease, including Crohn's disease or ulcerative colitis. Gas appearing within 30 to 60 minutes of every meal with consistent severity suggests SIBO and warrants breath testing. Any combination of these symptoms together, rather than in isolation, makes prompt specialist evaluation more rather than less urgent. Colorectal cancer in early stages can present with altered bowel habits, rectal bleeding, persistent gas and bloating, and unexplained weight loss. These symptoms together should never be attributed to diet and left unexamined. Safety guidance is essential. All information presented here is for general health education and cannot substitute for clinical evaluation. If your flatulence has changed in odor, frequency, or character over a period of months without dietary explanation, or if it is accompanied by any of the red flags described above, please consult a gastroenterologist. These symptoms in combination can represent conditions, including inflammatory bowel disease, SIBO, and colorectal cancer, all of which benefit enormously from early detection. Lifestyle modification is appropriate for managing mild to moderate dysbiosis, but is not a substitute for diagnosis when warning signs are present. What your body tells you is worth listening to, even when the message arrives in the least dignified form possible. If this video helped you connect signals you have been ignoring to mechanisms you can actually act on, subscribe. Share it with someone who would benefit. And leave a comment about what dietary change you are going to try first.